What is up, guys? Welcome to the edit video for the Tree of Life. This is one of my favorite images of all time, so I'm super excited to show you how I'm going to edit this. We're going to be taking this image here, which is now completely raw and unedited, and turning it into this final result here. Now, as you can see, there is a sky replacement and a decent amount of content removal in the bottom left corner of this image here. So let's go ahead and jump right into Lightroom and get started. All right, so we got these two images right here in Lightroom, both raw files. Let's go ahead and start with our preliminary edits on this baby right here. And I'm not gonna lie, we're gonna do a lot of preliminary edits here. Let's start by getting the exposure up a decent amount. Bring the contrast down a bit. Highlights, we can get rid of a decent amount of those because we're gonna be replacing that sky anyway. Shadows, let's bring out these shadows because we're gonna wanna work with this cave, I think, at a certain point. Whites, doesn't matter too much, but at a certain point, I'm gonna wanna make these roots pop a little bit more. So I think that white will help with that. And black, we'll just pull that out a little bit to help reinforce that shadow. In terms of the temperature here, we're gonna be one right mid-grade. I don't even think I need to do much. I don't want it to be too blue or too orangish. Let's just keep it right in the center there. All right, now let's go down to lens corrections. And let's see if the chromatic aberration does anything, and let's see what the lens profile does. Ooh. Again, as with a lot of my photos, I like it without the lens correction. I like that globular look there. So we're gonna keep that. And noise, we shot this at ISO 800, so I don't think noise is gonna be much of an issue. So we should be good on that front there. All right, that's looking good. And now let's sort out this sky, which I think I just want to keep basically the exact same. I really like the moodiness of it. Maybe I'll bring it a bit warmer, but I think this is going to be a pretty good sky right here. Let's go down the line here. Yeah, I'll pull out the shadows a bit. I think that's pretty good. Let's stick with that. All right, so now let's go ahead and open just this one right now in Photoshop, edit in Photoshop, and we're gonna open that other one separately. All right, so we got the image loaded up in Photoshop here. So now let's go ahead and go up to edit sky replacement and pick out a sky. All right, so we don't want this sky, so we're gonna click this plus button here, and we'll go click sky there and import that image into Photoshop. So we got the sky here. So let's see what this looks like. And it's looking a little rough around the edges here, but it's not too bad for a start. Let's go ahead and move the moon over here for one, and then let's start by increasing the scale on this thing. Yeah, maybe about like that size. Get this moved all the way over here. And there, I think that's a pretty good spot for that. Now let's just go down the line with all of these. I find that some of these work better than others depending on the image, and it's hard to really determine what all these actually do. So if we zoom in, this one's going to this edge here. So that helped remove a bit of that haloing and fringing along the lines there. We're probably still gonna have to clean this up a little bit, but I think that's a good start. Fade edge. See, like I said, some of these just don't really do much at all. That's a little bit better. I noticed it had a little bit of light over here once I pulled it this way, so we'll keep it down there, but we don't want it to be too much. Yeah, I think that should be good for now with that setting. Now let's check out the brightness here. Pull up the brightness a little bit, like maybe like that. Temperature, let's see what we got. Whoa. I think that very neutral blue is pretty good. Not quite like that. We already did scale. Now we got these bottom ones which adjust all of this stuff down here. So let's see what these do. Foreground light. So that seems to help with the fringing a bit. Edge lighting. And color adjustment. Whoa. All right, let's just keep that in the middle there. All right, I think that's a pretty good start for this. So let's go ahead and hit enter on that. And now let's back up here and get rid of some of this yuckiness in the branches there. So we can close this. And honestly, I think the solution is just gonna be to decrease the saturation of that blue. So I'm gonna create a hue saturation layer, target the blues, and just decrease it and see what happens here. See, that's already making a pretty big difference on this haloing here. And yeah, that looks very real. I think this blends with that sky very nicely right now, and it doesn't stand out. So we can work with this because now that we got rid of that blue color, we can slowly add it back in, but more into the places we want it to. So let's increase it a tiny bit there. And yeah, let's call it a day on that sky replacement. All right, so the next thing I wanna do, let's go ahead and work on getting rid of this mess over here. And the reason I want to get rid of all this is because it's such a distraction of the eye. The eye immediately goes to this spot because this is where all the branches are and it's white and trippy and very unusual. But then that same color's over here, so the next thing you do is go over there and it kind of takes away from all this. So we're gonna go ahead and just get rid of all this, which is gonna be a bit of a project, but let's go ahead and just see what happens here. So we're gonna just send it. Let's start with a giant content aware fill and just see what it does here. It could be good, it could be bad, but it'll at least give us a starting point for this. So we'll click on the background layer here because it's a pixel layer, so we have to do it on that. And then we go to content aware fill. And let's see what it does. Okay. Not horrible, but also not amazing, but it definitely gives us a bit of a starting point. Let's zoom in and see what's going on here. I wonder why it thinks there should be a root there. I don't know, but let's make sure all of this is selected here. Maybe let's deselect part of these roots here, and maybe it won't include those in the reference image. We also don't need any of this tree in this either. Remember, the green area is what it's sampling to build that content aware area. So we really don't need to sample any of this tree up here because there's no tree down there. Get rid of all this. And now let's see what happens. It's thinking. All right, so that's better. Now it's at least not looking completely absurd. This is the worst zoom in tool I've ever seen in my life. What happened to the preview? Is it just gone? Okay, I don't know what it's doing there, but I think it saved that preview. So let's just go ahead and hit OK on that. And hopefully that works. Yeah, okay, cool. So we'll deselect that. And now we're just gonna go in and clean all this up. And we're gonna do this with, let's see here. Let's use a healing brush for now. So we'll start with the ground here. We'll get a nice ground base. And we'll start by just selecting here and dragging that over here. Just like so. You know, I think I'm gonna use a clone stamp because this is trying to blend way too much stuff, and we just need pure dirt here right now. We don't need any of this other BS. So let's get rid of all this stuff. There we go. The wall here. Yeah. All right, so now we got a very basic wall rocking here. And now let's zoom in a bit. And I think let's fix this ground. I think let's do that first. So we'll start with now we'll get out the healing brush tool. Now that we have an actual foundation here, and we can start to brush in this ground a bit more here. And we're just gonna go anywhere it starts to look a little bit repetitive, because we don't want any of these rocks to look the exact same. Maybe we'll keep that rock like that. Maybe sample from over here a bit, get that rock thrown in there. Sample from here and get that in there. What do we got going on over here? That looks super real, so that's good. These textures are a little whack, so let's sample from over here. Go like that, maybe like that. Maybe a bit more of this tan texture along the edges here, like that. Let's see what else. Maybe take this and pull it over here a bit more. All right, and then maybe get rid of some of these anthills, because we don't need the whole thing being an anthill. Like, I'm assuming that's an anthill. Let's keep brushing along this. All right. Get rid of these anthills over here. And that's looking pretty good. Now let's fix up this hill a bit. So we got some of these lines looking the exact same. So let's get more of this texture coming through in here. Pull this down a bit. We want to just get rid of these like spots that just look pure blurry, you know. I kind of like how it just planted this thing there. I don't think that was there before, was it? I can't remember. But if so, kudos Photoshop for making that look real. Let's see, I'm actually curious if it put that plant in. Okay, yeah, it totally just planted a plant there for us. And I wonder if okay, so it sampled it from over here. I was like, what the heck? That's pretty funny. Let's get rid of this branch here. And let's see what else. Yeah, so that's actually a good idea. So the fact that it was taking textures from over here means we could steal textures from over there and blend that in a bit to make it look better, especially in these regions over here where it's a little wackadoodle. And this stuff just takes time. Like, you're not gonna get it in the first minute. You kind of just gotta sit here and just keep blending stuff until it starts to look real. There we go. Now we're starting to get a little somewhere here at this wall. All right, and we could throw a vignette in this part of the image later on to draw the eye away from it, but for now, I think that's looking pretty good there. I'm debating if I just want to keep this plant out because I don't want people to notice that's the same plant from over there. So I might just totally remove it. Maybe throw that. Yeah. We'll come back to that later if we need to, but for now, I think that looks pretty real. All right, so now that we got that removed there's what that looks like. How does this look better with this here? Okay, we need to just get out, I'm just getting out the eraser tool here and just erase this part because the original looks better right here. right up to there. Perfect. Okay. There we go. All right, so let's name that removal. Let's name this original. Sky replacement, hue saturation. All right, now let's go ahead and get these dark points out because they're very distracting. We just want to lighten up the contrast a little bit on this image. So I'm going to pull out a brightness contrast layer and just crank that a bit, invert it, and then I'm going to select a white paintbrush here, and with this mask, I'm just going to paint these spots in here. You know what? There's actually a way better way to do this. I don't know why I'm doing this like this. Let's go ahead and create a darks luminosity mask here to target these dark areas. And if you want to do it manually, you can go into the channels and do that. Just watch the luminosity mask video in the tutorials. But I'm going to use the luminosity mask panel TK Go up here because it's easier. And I'm going to create a lights or a darks. Let's do a darks 5. I think that's pretty good. So that's going to target all these areas that are super dark right now. And now we can apply that brightness contrast to it. And now watch. Now all I got to do is pull this contrast up there to get rid of those dark area contrasts and even add a bit more lightness to those areas here. So now this image is starting to look a lot more surreal, which I'm liking. All right, now let's go ahead and get this crop right. I want this rock here to be in the direct center. Whoops, just because I like making subtle things the center points of images for fun. So we'll keep that in the center. And then I'm actually going to expand this ground a little bit to give that rock some room to breathe there. And yeah, content aware is not letting us do that right now because I did other layers. I always forget to do the crop right at the very beginning. I always mean to and I always forget, but you know, that's just how it goes sometimes. So now when you do the crop later, you have to wait 20 minutes for it to load. So now that we got this situated, now we got to add more content down there. So let's just do Control-Shift-Alt-E to create a merged layer of everything. And this is a little trick you can do. So now we'll go ahead and select this part down here, edit content aware fill, and this should work pretty easily because there's really not a lot going down on the ground down here. Okay, so let's just hit OK there. Control D, and then now we could just delete this layer here because we don't need it anymore. Wow, that really stretched that ground. That did not do a super good job. We might have to rebrush some of this stuff. All right, back to the brush. So let's get out the content healing tool. And I don't want this rock to be in frame. So we're gonna use the clone stamp actually. Make it a bit smaller, select here, and then just like that. So now we have a rock that's in frame here. And I think that's perfect. Okay, now let's get this cleaned up because whatever it stretched down here did not do a very good job. So we'll get rid of this, got the clone stamp. And get rid of all these textures that are looking the exact same. There's just not a lot of ground in the sample, so we're kind of struggling a bit with this ground here to make up for the fact without looking too much like a copycat of these other parts of the ground here. Let's just select that and send it over here because that was just not good over there. All right, that's a lot better. But let's get rid of one of these just so it doesn't look like the same two rocks again, like that. Okay, then we'll create a vignette on that, like I said earlier, and we'll get that fixed up. Let's get this area cleaned up too down here. I didn't even notice this down here. It looks a little bit whack. See these like stretch lines? You don't want that. So let's just sample some other textures up here and just put them down there so it doesn't look like it was just stretched a million miles an hour. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Except for this little spot here. Let's get that. And remove one of those rocks. Like that. I'm a bit of a perfectionist with this, guys. You kind of got to be if you want to make these images look good. All right, so that is good for now. Now we got those light points up. Now let's work on pulling out these greens a bit more up here. So again, you can do a color mask, color range mask here, but I'm gonna use the panel here because it's a little bit easier to make color masks with it, I think, personally. So we'll go ahead and click that green color. And let's see what this mask does here. We'll pull this all the way up. It is struggling to identify those green colors a bit. So we'll just push that to the max. Now let's go ahead and edit this mask a bit here. Just brush out all these speckles that we just aren't part of the tree, obviously, because they're way down there. All right, and now let's create let's do a brightness one first. Mask. We'll brighten them up, then we'll add a little bit of color to them. All right, so there we go. Now we can brighten those up a bit. Not too much, just enough to make them pop a tiny bit. There. And now let's go ahead and create a hue saturation. And we could drag this mask by holding Alt and dragging it onto the hue saturation layer. Now we can pop those colors a bit more up there. And even if we wanted to, we could turn them a bit more on the yellow-green side, yellow side, which is nice because it matches this area down here. So now let's pull out these colors a little bit. So we'll do the same thing. We'll go ahead and create a range mask for these oranges here. There we go. That had a much easier time selecting those colors. Now let's get rid of this moon. We don't need that. And then now let's just directly create a hue saturation because I already think they're pretty bright. So we don't have to go too crazy. So yeah, now I just increase that saturation, and now we're getting a bit more color in those walls there. So this is what I meant earlier by we can pull out the colors individually later on once we got rid of that blue to make this blend with the sky a bit better. So that's good there. What else can we do to this image? Again, I'm gonna crop it again. I know I'm a crop fiend, but I think the sky is too high right now. There's too much sky. So we'll cut right there. And then after this loads, I wanna go through and I wanna start working on these roots here because that's the main creepiness of this image here. It almost looks like spider legs. So once we get those roots kicking, this is going to really start to come together. And we'll create a lights 1 mask with this, which lights 1 here, or maybe a lights 2, let's see. Yeah, because that's gonna target those roots a little better. Just like that. And then we'll go ahead and brush this mask a little bit more accurate so we're just getting only those roots in this luminosity mask we're gonna create here. We don't need any of this other stuff to be increased in brightness. So there we go. Roots fleek. Now we got a brightness, oops. I gotta create the mask in this here, not below. There we go. Now we have the brightness contrast. So I could delete that one. And there we go. So now we got those roots popping a bit more here. That color scream a bit more. Now, let's go ahead and pop in that good old vignette here. Because we're getting there. We're getting close on this image. So we'll center that. Curves adjustment, invert, convert to multiply, and then filter, blur, Gaussian blur, 420 pixel radius, and then decrease the opacity a ton. And now we're starting to get this cranking. Except I don't want the vignette in the sky here. I really like it along these edges here, but notice how it just looks way too much in the sky here. So I can actually go in and now paint this mask to be more accurate. So we got a black paintbrush selected, and let's just feather right along the sky here and get it out of the sky up here. Maybe even out of this tree up there. There we go. What did that do? Oh, okay, I don't have a totally black paintbrush selected. I was like, why is that not doing that completely? There we go. All right, there we go, round 2 on that. That's looking much better up there. Let's see. There, so now we're pulling the eye away from these kind of grungy corners down here, more into that eye center of the image there. And we're definitely getting there. I did want to see what it would be like if I pulled up a bit of blue up here. I'm not 100% sure if this is going to look good, but we're going to test it anyway. So we'll get a color balance going, a little bit of blue like that, and we're going to create a gradient on this mask here. So we'll just drag like this. We got to reverse that. There we go. Whoops. Yeah. Let's make it a bit longer. I'm just looking at this gradient here while I'm doing this, trying to get it where I want it. So I think that would be a good gradient of that blue, maybe at a higher angle actually. Yeah, let's maybe even higher. Okay, let's try it like that. So now let's increase this blue and see what happens. All right. So maybe I can increase it just a teeny tiny bit there. But notice how now we're only increasing the blue way up in this corner and not in these parts where it was missing up with the tree. So now pulling that blue back in there, getting that more on point. Let's do a general hue saturation and see what happens, just if we want to increase the color of everything a little bit. Yeah, I'll get that a little bit more colorful. I realize it is a moody, creepy shot, but you do like a little bit of color. Now, let's do the grand finale and do Control-Alt-Shift-E, which is going to create a merged layer of everything below this. And we're going to name this Orton Effect. So let's go ahead and apply this into a smart object so we can edit it later on. And once this loads, we can go to Image, Adjustments, up the brightness a bit, up the contrast a bit, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and 42 megapixels because that's the megapixels of my camera. So we'll hit enter on that, wait for it to load, and now begin to decrease this Orton effect, like 5%. There we go. So now we got a bit more of a dreamy tree. Maybe I can increase it a little bit. Yeah, so now we got a nice dreamy aesthetic going on, and not too much of a sharp monster, as I call them. So I think that's looking good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to do this. Let's do a final sweep of the edges and make sure there's nothing whack going on. This is one thing I like to do at the end of images. Make sure I didn't miss any sensor spots in the sky up here or any weird branches or anything. Looks pretty good in the sky. Down here is looking good. I don't know what that is. It might be like a piece of dirt or something. So Control-Shift-Alt-E again to create another pixel layer so we can do this final round of cleanup here. And let's just do a spot healing on that. Keep going here. All right. I think we are good. Okay, I think we are going to call it a day on this image, guys. That looks freaking awesome and was fairly simple. Definitely not as hard as it looks at first glance. So let's go ahead and hop into the next video.